afternoon, everyone. I am Bulat Felontola, a junior data marketing executive here at Futuresoft, and you are welcome to Launch and Learn. So Launch and Learn is a bi-weekly program where each staff gets to train people on topics relating to our industry. And if today is your first time of joining us, you are welcome. David Woruka, our lead graphic designer, will be facilitating today's session on the topic, how to build a consistent brand. Kindly mute your mic as we continue with the session, and if you have questions to ask as the session goes on, kindly drop them in the chat and they will be addressed by David after his presentation. Thanks for your cooperation, and over to you, David.
Once again, my name is David Woruka. I'm the lead graphic designer here at Futuresoft, and welcome to this episode of Launch and Learn. Today, I'll be looking at how to build a consistent brand. So let's start with the outline. So first, I would have my introduction. Then I'll look at the value of a consistent brand. And then I'll walk you through some tips on how to build brand consistency. And then we'll conclude for the day. So I would like to start with this quote from Jonah Sachs. Jonah Sachs is an author, and is one of the authors I actually read back in the day. So he says, your brand is a story unfolding across all customer touch points. And the essence why I've used this quote today is because of it's in line with the topic. So for your brand to be consistent, it means as the story unfolds across different customer touch points, it has to be the same. If at any touch point, you are telling a different story away from what you've told in a previous place, and then you start to lose track of focus, or you start to lose the attention of your customers, and then you have issues and you have challenges. So it's important to understand that your brand is actually a story unfolding across all customer touchpoints. And at every time you're talking to your customer, you're telling a story, and the story has to be the same, the story has to be consistent, and the story has to be true as well. So first, let's look at what brand consistency is. Brand consistency is how an organization communicates its core values, mission, and culture, resulting in a cohesive brand experience. It's important to understand that if you say this is what your brand represents, what your organization represents, if you say you stand for a certain value or a certain purpose, or this is the reason why you're here, if you're giving your customers to use as a promise, it's important to understand that you also have to communicate that promise, and you have to communicate it effectively and consistently. It affects every aspect of your marketing, from the way you talk to your customers, the way your design looks, and the way you present them, the message you present. They all have to be in line, and they all have to be consistent in giving the customer experience every time they encounter your brand. So let me give a quick example. The Volvo brand, if you're familiar with the Volvo brand, you understand that the Volvo brand is particularly known for its safety, and I just cropped out this from their website, which they said they started off because they didn't feel people were making cars were strong enough or safe enough for the Swedish road. And this is one of like the greatest, I would say this is like the foundation of the Volvo brand itself. They are big on safety, like that road safety, that durability, for the cars in which they are making. And they've been able to communicate this message for 95 years consistently, in as much as they are innovating, they are coming up with new technologies, they're coming up with new ideas. One thing the Volvo brand has actually stood for over the years is the fact that we depict safety. We're here because we care about your safety. We care about things that are long-lasting as well. And they've communicated that effectively over the years from the inception. One thing you need to know about them, the 3-seat pointer belt, the 3-point seat belt we use currently in most cars, basically all the cars. That was an invention by Volvo engineers. And then, this idea of safety, quality as well, they've been able to translate that in their communication over the years. And it's also something that's also reflective as well in their logo. The Volvo logo is actually an old alchemy symbol, which represents the chemical element of iron, that's IRON. So, and back then, that's also is also like symbolic for the Swedish steel industry, which they were part of, which also symbolizes durability, quality, and safety as well. And that's why they were able to also embed it into their logo. So they are telling you, this is what we stand for, this is why we're here, and they're representing it as well, also in their brand logo. And when you look at the communication over the years, to the right here, you see an image of their Instagram page. This was actually even like, I think I waited till yesterday to get this particular one because like I wanted the latest, and you could see just beneath this, the followership details, beneath the Volvo cars, you see safety in mind. And then when you look at the ad to the left, this was an ad they ran in the 70s. And when you look at the details, we designed every Volvo to look like this. If you read closely to the copy on that newspaper ad, you see it's still talking about, the safety. And then when you look at also the particular vehicle they are trying to promote also on the page, which showcased on the first three posts there, I think that's the Volvo X90. One of the key features about the car, it's crash mitigation technology. So I'm sure there are a lot of other innovations as well inside that particular car. But one thing they're actually trying to like sell the most about it is still that safety feature. And the reason why I'm putting this in place is this is a brand that has stayed for 95 years, and they've actually grown through the ranks. If you go through their website, look at their inception on how the product grew, you realize that not just in telling the story, but in the actual activities, in their actual design, or in the actual production, they ensure that these aspects in which they've decided to sell as part of as an essential part of the brand. They've decided to maintain that for the past 35 years, and they've been able to do it very well. Because for those people who are actually familiar with the Volvo brand, you understand like this is a very big deal for them. When you look at their marketing communications, they have like quite a lot of communications that actually sells that particular message, that this is one thing that is essential about the brand. And they've been consistent with it for over the years. They had this ad that they used the popular actor Jean-Claude Van Damme, in testing the precision of their steering wheels. He had to do a split between two Volvo trucks. And this just goes to show you the extent in which, they are still selling this message, and they've done it over the years, and they've kept on with it. And if you take your time to view the communication, the way they communicate, the way they try to portray their voice and everything, it still gives you that feel, of safety, it gives you that calmness, that smoothness. I've never seen a Volvo ad that is actually very, that looks very extreme. Their ads are usually tilted towards that's calmness, that quietness, that safe feel in which their brand is actually also trying to sell. And it's important to understand that this is how you create a brand, and this is how you make it consistent in terms of the communication, and how the user also gets to embrace the product and services eventually. So I would do some analysis on the value of consistent brand. So first, if a brand is consistent, it projects professionalism. So I've put together a mood board from one of our clients here, SCGN, and you could clearly see from the three images displayed here, from the website to the stationery to the digital marketing assets, you can clearly see the elements, how they relate with each other. You can actually see that uniformity, that similarity in the communication. And that shows, orderliness, it shows structure, it shows like, okay, see, we are conscious of everything we're doing. We don't just do things without thinking through it. And that's what professionalism is. And when you're consistent with your brand as well, this is an easy way as well to let people know that, okay, see, we're professional. We care about what we do. We value our relationship with you, and we don't take anything we do for granted. We think everything through. So it's important to understand how this can translate as well into the minds of your customers, for them to understand, because when they can see that relationship at every time you communicate, they understand that, okay, these people actually think things through. They value our relationship. So if I want to even engage these people, I can trust the fact that they can actually, deliver to the extent in which they're also suggesting. So it's important to know that, how you look professionally as well is also a very huge impact when you're consistent with your brand communication. Then also it provides simplicity and clarity. When you look at this ad, if you're familiar with the Visa brand, with the MasterCard brand, without you seeing the logo at the top left, you can easily connect this to MasterCard easily without you seeing MasterCard. Even if these were random images someone had just put together, or maybe just one of it, the chances that you would say this looks like MasterCard are very high. And that's because of how easy and how clear it is for you to recognize this in connection to the logo. And that's one thing about when you consistently communicate. And a brief story as well, I would say about this. Sometime, I think that was either 2018, they decided to remove the word MasterCard and just decided to use these two circles. And the reason why they did that was because of, over the years, this is something people have come to recognize, and this is known. And it was easy for them to take that step and represent it. And then when you look at the different creatives here, in as much as this is a brand that is already known globally, if this was a brand you're not familiar with, and they decide to promote themselves with using this campaign style, because of how the elements interact with each other on each creative, it's easy for you to see this once, and by the time you're seeing it next time, you can easily differentiate it from someone else or from a different brand, and you can easily tell that, okay, this is connected to these people. It's easy for you to just identify. It's also very simple and straightforward, and it's not something that is all over the place. It's something that is distinct, and it's just clear for you to really differentiate, and it stands out from the crowd, basically. Then also, brand consistency, so it increases visibility. So visibility, basically, it's brand visibility is about really engaging, in marketing to help draw attention to your customers. So the Visa example I gave, like I said, if they were just a new brand promoting themselves, why they are actually engaging in their marketing campaigns, in their marketing communications in general, it's easy for you to really identify their communications. Maybe you saw an ad on Facebook, and then maybe you're walking on the road and you see a billboard. It's easy for you to connect, because when you see similar elements, it's easy for you to connect, and that makes their visibility easy for you. It's easy for you to start seeing them. It's easy for you to start being aware of them, and the statistics have shown that brands that are that consistent are 3 to 4 times more likely, 3 to 4 times more visible than brands that are not. And then when you can easily start observing or seeing a brand, it's easy to recognize them. It's easy for them to stick. It's easy for you to understand that, okay, I've seen them before. Okay, now I know them. And yes, when you've seen them before and you know them, you can recognize them at every time. It's easy for you to trust them. It's easy for you to understand that, okay, these are the people you're communicating about. These are the people I've seen here. These are the people that are doing this. It's easy for that trust to start building. And then more especially, going back to the Volvo brand I talked about, for an organization that for over 19 years has actually stayed on a particular area, understanding that this is the primary reason why we're here. We're here because we care about safety. We care about road users and their purpose of they're traveling safe. We care about that. And they've been saying it for 95 years, and everything they've been doing tilts towards that. Every campaign, every communication, and even the technologies in which they put in place for their brand as well, for their actual product, also still suggest this. So it's easy over time for you to see them. And for the Volvo brand, for instance, as well, it's important to understand that they've also created, like I mentioned earlier, like the 3-point seat belt. That was an innovation by the company. So it's even easy for you to start associating them, given the fact that they even have innovations to suggest this. And even at the moment, they have one of the world's leading crash mitigation technologies as well. So it's important to understand that when a brand keeps saying the same thing, that this is why we're here, this is the purpose we're here, this is what we stand for, this is what we represent, and they keep saying it over and over, then it starts to build trust in the mind of the users, because it becomes more believable, because the story is still the same. The story is not changing, and they're telling you this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and they're not deviating. They're not saying today we are safety, tomorrow we are extreme, next tomorrow we're this. They've been telling you the same thing, and they've stuck to it. And then it's easy for you to actually connect with that, to understand that this is actually, true, and this is believable as well. And also, it increases visibility, revenue, sorry. It increases revenue. A research done by Mark they do a brand consistency report, and as out of their last year report, it shows that businesses with consistent brand, their revenue increased by 10 to 20%. And they actually carried out surveys on businesses, both B2B and B2C, and a couple of businesses. They analyzed and they saw that, this was actually impactful in terms of their revenue. And of course, the other metrics in which they looked at, but as well for revenue, they realized that it increased the organization's revenue by 10 to 20%. So it's not just about the look and feel, your way of communication, or the culture of the organization. It's not just doing those things for the sake of, okay, let's look this way. It also affects the bottom line ultimately as well. And then also it enhances the brand sustainability. When a brand is consistent with its communication and actually practice what it preaches, that brand will actually stay around for a long time. I've given an example of Volvo, 95 years and still running. MasterCard as well. MasterCard, they've been around for a very long time. I think the current logo they are using that became so iconic for them, is one, I think they started using that logo sometime maybe around the 90s or the 80s, can't exactly pinpoint, but they've been around since then. And that icon has actually been one that is very recognizable, to the point where they decided to take the brand name itself and just allow this icon to be representative of the brand. So it's important to understand that it affects the organization, holistically, and it's not something to actually, take for granted or trivialize. So I would go through some tips on how to build a consistent brand. So the first thing you need to do, the first step you need to do is to audit the brand, because if you're talking about brand consistency, this is not about just building a fresh brand. Brand consistent, if you're about to build a brand, then you stand a higher chance to create a better a more consistent brand. But when your brand already exists, the first thing you have to do is to audit the brand. You have to look inwards to see, where you are, what you're doing, and what you're missing out. You have to look at, let's say, primarily your communication channels, your marketing materials, your design styles, and your campaigns. When you look at these things, how do they connect to your brand ultimately? And across this different stuff, are there areas that are disjointed? Are there things that are not well representative of the brand? Are there things that are not even connected? Is the way your writing style, are they different at different points? Is there any way you're not actually, I would say, having that alignment? It's important to actually make this analysis. You look at your communication channels, you look at your marketing materials, you look at your design styles, you look at your campaigns. When you take a close look at this, you should be able to go back to the drawing board to better understand, your target audience, understand how you look, how you feel, and communicate across different channels. You look at the type of content that is relevant to your target audience. You look at the channels you need for your communication, and also the collateral you need. When you carry out an audit, this thing should be some of the things you look at, understanding your target audience, the people you're looking at, are they the people you're even supposed to be targeting in the first place? The way you look and feel and communicate across different channels, are they even in alignment? Are you saying you're a fun brand and then you're using colors that does not suggest that? Or are you saying you're a serious brand and then you're also using colors or communication styles that are not also depicting that? The channels as well are also important. If you say you're a corporate brand, for instance, and you're trying to target business professionals, and maybe you don't even have a presence on LinkedIn, you don't even have articles you're putting out, you don't even have maybe like a blog, you don't even have newsletter you're sending to specific people. These things are things you'll be able to see when you actually carry out an audit of the brand, and then it gives you a clearer picture and a better insight on how to better structure the brand. And then you also understand the type of collateral you need. You understand the channels to leverage on. You understand the kind of content as well that will be relevant to the people you're targeting, and it will better position you, for your brand. So it's important to understand that carrying out an audit is not really far-fetched. So basically, you look at your target audience, you look at your channels, you look at the marketing materials you have, you look at your design holistically, and then you look at the campaigns you've run in the past, and you make analysis with respect to your brand's core, your mission, your vision. Do they align? Do I even have a mission? Do I even have a vision? Do I have these things properly mapped out? Are there core values, or that guides the culture of my organization? So these are some of the things you should be able to look at, when you're carrying out an audit. You look at your channels, your website, your social media, what are the alignment in these channels, and see how you actually put this in order. So, but after carrying out an audit, when you can see the different areas where you're actually missing opportunities and the areas where you're not actually putting up, I would say, the best of your brand, the next step is to actually craft a brand strategy. And I know quite a lot of times when we hear the word strategy, it gets a bit overwhelming. And it's because, the process can be a bit complicated and a bit technical. But in simple terms, it's just really a long plan by an organization with specific goals, and how you intend to actually create, a mindset about your brand in the minds of your customers. So it's basically, how do we structure ourselves to better connect with our customers? So that's the whole idea of a strategy. When you're putting strategies in place, it's to better position yourself as an organization or as a brand in general. With respect to your clients, with respect to your customers, to see how can I better communicate with them? How can I better connect with them, build a better relationship with them, and also in turn, give them better services or products. So, and when you have a strategy crafted, it gives clarity to your brand. It makes you understand where there are misalignments. It makes you understand some of the things you need to put in place to ensure that you have a brand that is whole and that is not disconnected, but more single-minded and more connected towards, a clear purpose and goal. And a good strategy should be able to clearly define your target audience. You should be able to clearly define your brand's mission, vision, and core values. You should be able to give a clear positioning statement. And a positioning statement, or the idea of positioning in general, is just how are you differentiated from other brands in your industry, from your competitors? What benefits are you offering? And who are you offering these benefits to as well? So that's primarily what it is. And when you have a well-defined target audience, you understand your brand's mission, your vision, and your core values, it's easy to understand where you're positioned as a brand. And then when you have these things in place, it's easy to have a clear messaging, because when you understand what differentiates you from your competitors, it's easy for you to start telling your brand story. It's easy for you to start telling your target audience that this is what makes me different. This is what I stand for. This is what you stand to benefit from me. You have a clear message, and it becomes easy to start saying something that is actually unique, something that is actually in line with why you're here, with your mission and your vision and your values and everything. It becomes clear and it becomes aligned. And from that as well, it's easy to also create a personality, because when you understand your differentiation from your competitors, it's easy to understand that these are your uniqueness. It's easy to start associating certain personalities or traits, based on that differentiation. And it's easy for you to start building up on that with how you talk to the customers, because the differentiation might just be people, let's say we use the bank, for instance. People might just come to your own bank because from your analysis, you realize that quite a lot of people think sometimes banks are too serious and uptight. And you decide to you decided to strike a little bit of balance where people understand that, see, this brand can actually be, that's your regular day guy, but at the same time can also be that serious financial advisor. And that can just be that uniqueness you see, and you put that into a proper structure where you start communicating in that direction. When you put out marketing materials, you put out communication materials, when you're representing the brand as well in terms of its identity, you reflect that as well. And in the design, people can actually see that balance. They can actually strike that balance in understanding, okay, this is what this brand actually portrays. This is who they are. You're using imagery, you're using the kind of language that actually suggests that this is who we are. And that might just be something so little, might just be what actually sets you apart, and you start having, I would say, a boom, in your industry. And then looking at all this, I would just show 2 slides with an example of what we did for one of our clients, Invested World. So when Invested World came in, now they had an existing brand, and the brand was actually cool. But then these were some of the issues in which they had. First of all, the target audience, or like we tag them here, the stakeholder group, we're not as defined as we eventually made them. In terms of what matters to them as well, those were not as clearly defined, in which we eventually help them to understand, okay, see, these are, I'm not going to, I really cut down some of the pages because of confidentiality issues. So you may not get the full picture of some of these details. But Vested Board is basically an investment organization, an investment company. And then we were able to like break down the different stakeholder group and what actually matters to them, And from the stakeholder group, we also created structure for the communication channels, how to communicate to them through those communication channels, and what to say to them based on what matters to them. But before I'll get to that slide, I just wanted to flow with this part here from defining the stakeholder group. We also structured some messaging pillars for them because we looked into the brand story. We were able to craft one for them. And in a further slide, I also displayed where that comes in. And we're also able to help them clearly outline their core values and also their mission, vision, and every other necessary detail to help guide the brand in how they communicate, and how it's whole and single-minded and not all over the place. So we help them define the stakeholder group. From understanding the stakeholder group and the things that matters to them, it's easy to start understanding. Okay, is it better now?
Yes, so please just go back to the beginning of that sentence.
Okay, where did you miss me so that I can just take that over again?
Just what you were talking about, the stakeholder groups.
Okay, so I said, so when we did analysis on the stakeholder group, we were able to split the stakeholder group into different categories, in which this was something that was not as clearly defined as it was, as it is now, after we actually engaged them. So the stakeholder group were clearly defined, and we also clearly defined what mattered to each stakeholder group. And there are only just 3 depicted here, but I think in total there were about 6 stakeholder groups we were able to like clearly define for them. And as a result of defining those clearly, we're able to also clearly map out the kind of messaging we use, based on the value, based on the story, based on their target audience, based on the region they want to operate. We're able to clearly outline certain messaging pillars, that they can actually, tap on quite often to see how when they are communicating, when they are putting out communication material, they are actually on track. They're not just talking about everything, but they are saying things that actually matters to the brand essence. And that's where the messaging pillar comes in. So without an understanding of the stakeholder group and what matters to them, you can't clearly craft, the messaging pillars, because then exactly what are you going to be saying to these people? What are you going to be talking about? You see? And then without also understanding where the brand is coming from, without understanding the brand story, without understanding the brand's vision, the brand's mission, you can also clearly map out the stakeholder group. Because it's when you have this idea, you can easily do that. You understand, okay, these are the people they are targeting. And then when you understand the people they are targeting, what matters to those people, it's easy to know what to then start telling those people, which is where the messaging pillar comes in. And when you can start telling those people the right things, it's easy for you to start having conversion. And then when you have a stakeholder, when we had their stakeholder group mapped out, had clear messaging pillars defined, we also looked at the brand voice. I gave an example of where if maybe you wanted to have a financial, you found out that your bank would just have that personality of, okay, I want to be a regular day guy, but at the same time, I want to be that financial advisor you can trust. We also mapped out a brand personality. Here, I just decided to put a brand voice, but it's more around the personality. So some of the things we realized from what they said to us, looking at also their customer, their stakeholder group, was the fact that they want to be formal, they want to be detached, they want to be professional, but at the same time, they want to also be laid back and they want to also be serious. And you can see here clearly that each of these were tagged, with a color. You can see the detached and laid back is tagged with orange. You can see that the very dark blue is tagged with seriousness, and the light blue is tagged with professionalism. Now, when you also understand color theories, you understand the reason for why these colors as well were also associated with these traits. So, and then you're not just saying, okay, we want to be formal, we want to be detached, we want to be professional, we want to be laid back, we want to be serious. It has to also reflect in the design and in the communication. So when you look at the vested word brand holistically, in which I'll show some, and then you get a clear picture of what I see. When you look at it, you look at the imagery, it actually communicates this as well. So even in the writing style, because we also had not just the communication, there was also like the structure in terms of like the communication style as well. Those were also clearly depicted and also embedded into a full documented manual for them. When you look at that in details as well, it also says this is how you're supposed to talk to these people, this is what you're supposed to say, this is how you're supposed to approach it. And then the communication channels as well. You can see the first part, we listed social media, company and individual team members, LinkedIn, and this is for like their own internal purpose, how they can leverage these channels for themselves in terms of promoting. Also look at website and email marketing. And there are also more of these as well. But like I said, I'm only just giving snippets of this, and that's because this is going to be online and I can't give out everything. It's some of these details are not supposed to be dispatched to everybody. So, but the most important thing here is understanding like there's a process to this, and when you can craft from your target audience, you understand the brand's essence, the brand's value, the brand's core creed, if I'll use that term, you understand, then it's easy to have a clear message and it's easy to define a personality, and then you understand how you understand the places where you can communicate this and effectively communicate it to the point where people can understand that this brand is actually single-minded. They're actually saying something that is in a particular direction and they're not deviating. They're not all over the place. They're actually directed. They actually know what they're saying. They actually know what they are looking for. So then after you order the brand, you craft a strategy. After crafting a strategy is basically implementation after that, but we'll skip through that process of implementation to just say build the brand elements into a guide. So, but that process of building the brand elements into a guide is basically the implementation, which is, from creating creating the detailed documents of what I've showcased here, having a proper documentation of the different stakeholder groups, what matters to them, the brand messaging pillars, the brand personality, the brand voice, the marketing channels as well, down to creating the logo, the visual identity in general, creating all of these. And after you've done creating them, you build them into a brand guide. And a brand guide is basically a document, that outlines the overall rules that define the overall look and feel of your brand. And it helps organizations, to target their audience and recognize across all platforms. And when a brand is holistic, it covers from your typography, color palette, to tone of voice, mission, vision, statement. So basically, a brand guideline is just, to use the term, for designers, they will always use the word that it's your brand's Bible. That's the term we use, But then you hear other names like style guides, brand book, and so on and so forth. But, brand manual as well. But basically, they are all revolved around the same thing. But the goal of that is to have every information that is necessary for your brand's development, for your brand's communication, for your brand's sustenance. It's just documenting them into a document and then handing it over to every necessary team member, people that this will be relevant to when it comes to how your brand is communicated at all level, whether it's PR, whether it's traditional media, whether it's digital, whether it's outdoor, whatever it is, it has every detail one needs. With that alone, one can actually study through this and ensure that, your brand is communicated effectively. And that's the whole goal and purpose of a brand guide. And then I will show again some snippet as well, still from Vested Word. So you can see from this, we started with the brand story, and then we have the brand core values. So there are multiple pages with just notes like this. And these are like the first set of pages you see. So before you even get into the point where you're starting to see the image style, you're starting to see the reflection of the colors, you're starting to see the design style, you're first understanding the background, the strategy, the idea behind the brand, and with that background, with that understanding, it starts to give you a clear picture of what the brand is about. And then by the time you're getting to the point where you're actually seeing their designs, it starts to become clearer. If you're seeing them having an orange and you're wondering why is it an orange color, you understand, okay, there's an orange color because of it represents something, and then brand guides as well help you clearly define how your logos are supposed to be used. Here you could see logo lockups, and there are like 5 lockups. And these are some things, if you don't, people will not be able to like use your logo effectively, and there are also more pages about just the logo alone that I'm not also presenting on the slide. But there are just more rules about how the logo is supposed to be used, how they're supposed to be structured, the different colors of the logo, when to use them and how to use them. And same as well with the typography, what typography to use, where to use them, the hierarchy of the typography, the combinations of the typography. Those are well outlined as well in this manual. But I'm just only giving like the preliminary pages of those sessions. But like for this manual, it has detailed rules on how to apply the logo. It also has detailed rules on how to apply the typography. And then also there's the color palette, so all the colors the brand use are depicted here clearly. And also there is also a detailed rule, like there's a color chart that was actually created for this. So to understand the percentage of colors to use, if you're using this particular background, what are the colors that goes with it? If you're using this particular background, what are the colors that goes with it? What would you use for the font? And those hierarchy were clearly depicted. And the reason for that is also because, if these are not clearly depicted, when people want to put out communication materials, then they get confused, they get carried away, and then it starts to also create issues with the brand. And the same thing as what we did for the design, we did as well clearly for also the aspect of other aspects of the communication, so that when this manual gets to the hand of the user, whoever is going to be needing it, they have clear directions on what to do. They have a clear picture on how to communicate this brand. And at any time, I can put my feet on the ground and tell you that if you're about to create a communication, a design, or whatever is necessary to actually project this brand vested word, if you have this guide, if you're likely confused, the percentage of that is, I would say, is less than 0.5%, because it's well detailed and it outlines clearly everything you need to do. And with this, you're good to go at every level of communication. And then also, this is a sample of design structures, but there were more structures or more detailed structures as well on how this is supposed to be and how it's supposed to operate as well. So this is just a sample of the social media templates, but this is like the power of what a brand guide does. It details everything a brand needs, and it helps the communication of the brand, it makes the communication of the brand easy. And that's why it's important where after you carry out your audit, you craft your strategy. When you develop the brand elements, you build them into a guide. When you build them into a guide, that serves as the pinpoint for the communication. It serves like the source point and the secret source, so to speak, for the organization, for you to effectively communicate them at every time. And with a clear set of rules there, it is always going to follow a consistent pattern. And then another thing I'll have to state is creating guides as well. From time to time, guides update, because there are times like when and I'll explain more about that. But when you routinely carry out audits on your brand, because carrying out an audit does not mean just do it once and then you're consistent. Or you routinely carry out audits on your brand, you revisit your brand values, you revisit your mission, your vision, you ensure that, okay, whatever you're doing for the past 4 months, for the past 6 months is actually still in line. You still look at certain things, maybe you've skipped in the initial point and you feel this, okay, will be necessary, then you can add those information. So brand guidelines as well can also be updated, but that does not mean it has to be changed completely, except if the brand is actually moving in a totally new direction, then it's like a full brand refresh. And then the strategy behind that refresh, the new direction in which the brand is headed, will be depicted in the new set of guides as well, and the set of brand elements that will be created. And even in the strategy, everything will be reflected clearly as well. So after you build everything into a guide, it's also important to engage the team. So don't just build a guide and then you let it go. And then when you hand it over, you feel that is okay. It's important to engage the team members, in as much as there are certain team members that will be more engulfed with the brand or more immersed with the brand than others. It's important for at least every team member to know their brand standards. It's important for them to understand what the brand is about, to understand the brand for its mission, from its values. Like here at Futuresoft, and one thing I don't care always push is the fact that okay, see, and some of you may not notice, but at every time, something falls out of line, I get a call, I get a message that, did you see this? This is not in line. Are you sure you've taken this person through the training? Okay, take this person through the training. We even had a recording at a particular point where, the brand was actually, outlined and the training is being done. And at the moment, we are also revamping our brand, and we are going to also embed a video and have details of everything, and for those of you who joined us before we started the refresh, you realized that when you came in, I sent you a brand kit which had our logo, it had our manual, it had our templates, it had virtually everything you needed to communicate to make your landing easy. And also, by the time we're done with our revamping as well, there will be a training as well for everyone to understand how to apply the brand, to understand down from our family values and certain things while we're using blue. A lot of you hear the word blues for the culture. Where did that come from? I mean, but like these are some of the things, that are the impact of carrying out like a team engagement. But it's important to train the team to make them understand the brand, from the strategy behind the brand itself down to actually how you're communicating it. Because when this happens, it makes the employees or the entire team to understand, what their brand is about. And it starts to also reflect in their culture. It starts to reflect in everything they do. Because if there's a way they're supposed to talk, and that is reflected in the manual, if there's a way you're supposed to dress, and it's also reflected in terms of your design style and all of that, it's clearly stated. Those things are clearly included in the manual, the brand's personality, and how it's also reflected on each team members. When those things are clearly stated out, and you train the team members to understand that this is what a brand is, it makes it easy for them to start embodying the brand. And trainings like this doesn't have to be one-off. They can be repeated trainings, and you should keep doing this to ensure that, until the employees are also one with the brand. And then, of course, every team member needs to also have access to the brand guide. They need to have access to the brand guide, and they also guide it with prestige as well, because details as well from the brand guide sometimes might not be right to get into the hands of your competitor. So it's also important to also guide your brand manual as well with prestige. But it's important to engage the team for them to understand where the brand is coming from, what the brand needs, where the brand is headed, and how it's needed to be communicated as well. So then after engaging your team, you streamline content creation. And I have to put this because this is one important part. Depending on how big your organization is, it can actually be so much of an issue, ensuring that everything you put out is consistent. And this is where an issue comes in a lot of times. And that's why the bigger the organization, it's often advisable to contract an agency, because then it's easily managed, because it's easily tracked, it's easily structured. But irrespective of that, there are there are just clear steps you can take, because whether you're being managed by an agency or you want to do it internally, some of the steps you can take to ensure that you have a clean, consistent brand is to ensure that you create brand templates first. So for every client we've worked with, we ensure that we have like multiple templates for them as much as we can, from social media templates to presentation templates to report templates to word templates to proposal templates. And the essence of this is so that, when they want to create materials, they don't have to start creating everything from scratch. They already have the elements structured in, and they can just make certain edits. The colors in the hierarchy are already imputed for them. The fonts in the right size is already imputed for them. The fonts in the actual required font as well is also imputed for them. And we do this as well when it also comes to their email communication style, when it comes to their social media communication style. We send guides to our clients for them to understand, okay, this is how you communicate on social media. This is how you communicate when you want to send an email. And this is how you also put out blog posts. This is your guide. So we do all of that as well, structured. So it's important to have, SOPs and to have templates so that when they want to communicate this, it's communicated clearly. But if you have a bigger organization, I would say it's advisable to often contract it to an agency, because that will give it like a more seamless and a more professional approach as well. Because then the people managing this are going to the professionals, they understand the value of this, and it's easy for them to do. Then away from that as well, it's also to establish a creative workflow. Establishing a creative workflow, like I said, partly is also employing an agency. But away from that, if you want to build an internal team, a creative workflow can just be you having, a brand manager or just a brand custodian that ensures that everything being put out goes through a quality control test to ensure that they meet up to the brand standards and they don't fall short of that. And then also create a central access point. So it's important to why you're distributing these elements. If people want to have them on their local devices, on their local system, is still okay. But it's important to have a drive folder where these informations can be accessed, where people can access all your logo files in the different formats that are required, where they can access all the different templates, if it's reporting, presentation, if it's social media, where they can have access to this, where they can have access to your font files, where they wouldn't lose access to anything. It's important to have a central organizational drive where these informations and resources can be easily accessed. So for every guide you have, for every information you have, they can access it from this point and anyone can easily have access to it. Of course, there has to be some security measures so that it's not bastardized and abused. So, but most importantly, it should be readily accessible for any team member as well that maybe needs access to one, or maybe if they don't have the editable versions or usable versions they previously had, so they can always reaccess it and gain access and use, maybe a fresh one if needed. And then it's important to organize the assets. It's important to have a structured organization, not just in terms of the folder, not just putting them in a drive folder, let's say Google Drive, and you have a folder that says company resource, and when you open it, you just have multiple files there. You should have maybe a title, brand kit, inside the brand kit, font files, presentation templates, word templates, reporting templates, social media templates, and maybe even streamline access to who has what, So if maybe, the people at the social media management level may not need certain report templates, you don't need to grant them access to that. They can just only have access to the ones they need. And then also ensure you also have like the backup where if any file is mistakenly deleted from the folder, it can be re-uploaded or added back to that particular folder. So it's important to organize your asset as well, so that when people access it, they access it properly and they know what it's used for, when they also engage with the guide itself. Then after doing all this, you have to still monitor your brand activity. Just putting all the structure in place alone, having someone who monitors everything, doesn't end from just looking at the content. From time to time, still routinely carry out audits, after, let's say after every 4 months, you can just, or after every 3 months, or if possibly every month, as often as you can, see how you carry out audits, to look at your blog posts, to look at your websites, look at your social media, and even the ads you're running. Ensure that, the ads you're running, if you click them, they're actually directing you to your website and there are no broken links. Ensure that the files you have uploaded on your website actually up to date and they're in line with the brand standards. Also ensure that there are no colors that are actually falling off on your website. Also ensure there are no fonts that has been changed. You look at these things and ensure, social media, that the communication are still in line and they're still structured. If you have a grid style, a grid structure, ensure that it's being followed. So, and you do this by routinely carrying out, just auditing the brand routinely. Apart from the initial audit, you audit as often as you can, and it doesn't stop, because that's the whole process to ensure that the brand stays cohesive, is to keep looking at the activities and to keep understanding the areas as well you're winning, and see the areas you're not winning, see the areas where, maybe things are not really playing out as expected, and see how you can go back to the drawing board, re-strategize and restructure that as well. So it's important, and when you look at those things, it's important to know what engages more, and you pay attention to that and see how you can boost that more and see what you can add to it and see how your brand goes better. And then also collaborate with external partners. This can be a huge problem most times, and it's important to not just give your brand guide, in as much as that is good, and that is very important. When you hand your brand guide over to external partners, if you're partnering with an event with a different company for an event or for a campaign or for something, it's important to hand them your brand guide. But then also your brand custodian or the agency managing your brand should be able to monitor whatever they are doing to ensure that it meets up to your brand standards. Because when you're giving your stuff to external partners, they will eventually mess it up. And I say this because it has happened to us before. There was a client, they are not even a client, there was an organization, I think Kim was supposed to speak, and they were creating banners for her, and the way they used our logo was wrong. But then again, of course, because we had the structure in place, they had to come back to me to say, okay, this is how it has been used, and I had to give a better direction. Okay, this is the best way to use it, this is the best way to use it, and that will be better. And if we don't have that in place, it would have been really bad for us putting out our brand there, and we don't even have an idea, and then they are misusing it. But because we have like that structure that ensures that everything we do is in line with our goal and with our standards as a brand, we're able to actually fix that. And it's important to also do this every now and then, ensure that your partners they understand how to communicate your brand, they understand how to place it. And those are some of the details too that can still be outlined in your brand, how you do your co-branding. Where is your logo supposed to be placed? If it's a co-branding, if it's your own partnership with others, or if they are the ones partnering with you, how do you place your logo? What colors of the logo are you going to use at that point? Which stacking is preferable? Those are some of the things you have to actually clearly outline to external partners. And it still has to come back to your quality control team to ensure that, your standards are being met. So I think with that, I come to the final words, which I'll say. So regardless of the business side, the brand, the importance of brand consistency cannot be undermined. It's important for both your equity and how and it increases your revenue. So, and in all of these, you have to still maintain consistency. You have to stay true to it, and then your brand will keep growing. It will keep building until it gets to that point of legacy. And I had said this before, you focus, you try to observe the areas where you're succeeding, and then of course look out for the areas where you need improvement, and then you keep building. And yeah, that's it. Thank you everyone for listening. So I don't know if anyone has any questions so far.
All right, thank you very much, David. David has been able to put us through how to build a consistent brand, and it has been a wonderful presentation. I really loved it, and the examples he gave us some brands that have been consistent in their way, which he gave us Volvo and MasterCard and others too. So I don't know if anyone has questions for David. You can please unmute your mic and ask him the question you have.
Hi. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, David.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I really liked your presentation and I loved all the examples that you gave. I had a quick question. I don't know if you mentioned this and I missed it, but in what situations do brands usually get a brand refresh? When did they decide, or what is there any kind of criteria that makes pushes for there to be a brand refresh, or to kind of start auditing the brand again?
Okay, I think you're asking somewhat of two questions in one. So if it's about auditing your brand in general, there's really no criteria. It's just important. That's just a way of ensuring that your brand stays consistent, it stays in order, it stays intact, and maintain its standards. But in terms of a brand carrying out a refresh, coming to the point where they feel we don't feel where we want to be and they want to refresh, that's dependent on the organization. So like I said, for instance, when Vesterboard came to us, they wanted more than where they were. They wanted certain things to be clearly defined. That was because they had the need for it. They understood that, okay, we had stakeholder groups that were not clearly defined. We don't really have our communication channels as defined as it should be. And one thing they were very specific about, they were very specific about the fact that they want a clear a standard way they want to communicate across different channels. We're very specific about this, and they were also very specific about how they want to see. So like these were things they knew, and that's why they sought out for an agency that can help do this for them. And they having these issues already, they're already seeing it, that this is an issue for us, these are problems we have. So they decided to come to us, and we decided we're able to also put that in place for them. But then away from an organization seeing the fact that there are areas, there are loopholes, and they want to make adjustments to those loopholes, it's important to also understand that sometimes a brand might have outlived its initial vision. So one of the brands we're working for at the moment, they are carrying out an entire brand refresh, and that project is still ongoing. Now, I'm not going to talk about maybe inconsistency in their case, even if when we audited the brand and looked at it, they were. But at the moment, the reason why they came for refresh was because they saw themselves, they've been around for close to 30 years. And then they realized that, okay, at this point, we need to evolve into a new phase. We need to evolve into a new direction, into a new dimension, not really losing focus on where we were before. So, but they just wanted a new direction in terms of their focus. They wanted an evolved brand. It's just the same example I drew with the MasterCard. They've had the MasterCard look where you had the circles and you still had MasterCard. But then over time, an article I read, the CEO was talking about how this brand has been around and they're ready to take it to the next level where the circles is just symbolic. So you need to understand that even if a brand is consistent, they might come to a point where they want to also just evolve, or where they want to head in a new direction. And that's mostly the case when you're having a brand refresh or a total brand overhaul. So I don't know if you got it. So first, a brand can be audited even if it's still, on point at every level. You have to keep, routinely checking the brand, keep checking the brand to ensure everything is intact and there's nothing being there's nothing falling off. Then two, you need to understand that brands also come to the point where they realize that there are certain things they are missing and they want to fix those things. And then they sort out for agencies that can help them do that. Then thirdly as well, sometimes brand outlive their vision, or they've actually achieved the original purpose of coming into play. But of course, they will keep existing. And now they want to head in a new life, or they just want to evolve. Sometimes to total rebrand or refresh is also as a result of acquisition. We had that in the case of UPDC, when we started the initial brand refresh. They wanted a new look at the initial point because they knew where they were, and in the way they want to be seen, didn't fit. And we were working on that. And even in the process while we're doing that, they were acquired by the custodian group. And after that acquisition, we had to also redirect the strategy and redirect the entire identity and the entire design process to fit in that light as well. So it's dependent on the need. So there isn't a certain criteria for an overhaul of a brand or the refresh. It's just depending on what's the need at that particular time. So that's what will determine if the brand has to be totally overhauled or if it just has to be refreshed to be seen as evolved. Some brands, they've been around for 20 years, they've been around for 30 years, and the way they are looking, doesn't fit into the current time we find ourselves. So they just want to look more modern. They can still maintain elements from their previous look, but they want to be seen by their users as we've evolved. We're not just that business that have stayed around for 30 years. When the past 30 years, we've grown as well. As technology is changing, as times are changing, we're also changing, but we're still maintaining our real values. We're still maintaining our brand values. The Volvo logo, it has evolved over time in terms of its appearance, but it still maintains the same elements, but it has evolved in terms of the appearance. The initial Volvo logos had shadows, but at the moment they are flat, and that's because of the era with iron design, but it still maintains that same look and feel. So, and in general, that's also important for brands as well, to still just evolve with time, but still maintaining their truth as a brand. And then most importantly, even if a brand is still together, like I said, it's still on point. For brands who who were just launched in the past 5 years, it's still important to keep carrying out audits to ensure, they are still maintaining their standard, because without that process of routinely auditing it, the amount of, I'll say, misalignment will start increasing, and it comes to a point where it starts affecting the communication in general. So I don't know if this answered the question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else with a question? Okay, so I think say silent means say yes or but I think I don't think there's any question or comment from anyone. But with this, I've come to the end of my session for today. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for giving me your time. So I think to be back to you now, Boluwatife. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thank you very much, David, and thank you everyone for joining. Please note that this video will be available on our YouTube channel, and if you have questions while watching the video, you can drop them in the comment section, and we'll be very happy to answer your questions. Join us next 2 weeks for another session. Do have a lovely day. Bye, everyone.